Welcome, everyone. I'm Lilia Perez. I'm the Grants and Programs Manager for Arts Mid-Hudson, and I'm here today to talk about the Empowered Artist Award and go over all the details of the program and give you some tips about what we're thinking for this first year that we're doing this program. Again, I'm Lilia Perez. I'm the Grants and Programs Manager for Arts Mid-Hudson. I've been here for about 6 years. And also on our grants team is Amani Jones, who's our Administrative Assistant, and Jonathan Nunez, who is our Administrative Associate. We can all be reached at grants@artsmidhudson.org or at this phone number, extension 11. I'll say that email is a really fast way to get in contact with us, but please choose whatever method is most accessible to you. And when you email that email address, any one of us might be responding to you, but if you're communicating with one person in particular, feel free to address any correspondence directly to that person, and that person will reply. And so today I'm going to go over the purpose of this award, why it was set up, what we hope to achieve with it. I'll go over the important dates, eligibility, how we're going to review these awards, the application, and then give you some additional tips. We have this information session today is happening live. There are some people watching. It's also being recorded and will be on YouTube. In addition to this, we will have a few Q&A sessions where you can drop in on Zoom and ask any questions you have about the award and hear from other applicants what kind of questions they have. Feel free to attend those. I think it's a great way to get a sense of what the applicant pool might look like. So at the main, I'll show you where to find everything on our website in a little bit, but there is an RSVP link there. So make sure you sign up and you will receive the Zoom access information for the Q&A sessions. If you're here today, you'll already be getting those emails, and it's the same Zoom room you used to come here today. If you require any additional accommodations or assistance, then please do not hesitate to reach out to us, and we will be happy to provide any kind of assistance that we can feasibly accommodate, including translation services for grant assistance, large text documents, technical support, and we really encourage you all to take advantage of that. I'm going to also make sure I don't think that the auto transcription was on. YouTube also does it, but I'm just going to enable it here. And so I'll say again that if there are any accommodations that we can provide to aid in your ability to submit to this award, do not hesitate to reach out to us, and we will figure out the best way to make that happen for you. And for everyone, there is assistance available to all applicants. We can discuss any specific questions you have, brainstorm your ideas, and you can receive feedback on a draft of your writing. We use this assistance appointment form for all of our appointments that you can make with the grants team. It's always in our email signature and on our website, and it's artsmidhudson.youcanbook.me. And I pretty much went over this, but just another tip about why it's such a great idea to talk to us and get technical assistance is because we can provide a lot of networking opportunities that way, kind of hear what you're working on and make some helpful recommendations about people who would be great for you to get in contact with. And that's kind of one of the main features of our technical assistance. So now we'll get into the purpose for this award, and we are really thrilled to be able to offer this award. We fundraised for this in honor of our incredible former executive director, Linda Marston Reed, who really often was an advocate for trying to find ways for us to provide unrestricted funding to artists, because so much of the funding that we give out at Arts Mid-Hudson is project-based or capacity building initiatives or for very specific purposes. And she really believed in trusting artists and giving them funding support to, just fund their practice, pay their bills. And so we received donations for this award from 110 distinct donors. So I just want to thank everybody who donated to the Empowered Artist Award if you happen to be watching, because without your donation, none of this would be happening. And so we're really excited to be giving out this award. And I'll also just acknowledge this image on the right that you're seeing is a piece created by one of our board members, Sydney Cash, in honor of Linda's retirement. It's called Adios Redhead. So you'll see that as a part of the imagery for the award. And so our goal with this is to provide critical need to artists in the form of unrestricted funds so they can continue their practice, elevate their careers, and be more visible within the community. Some of the goals that we've listed here are pretty broad of what we're trying to achieve as a whole, which is to support some Dutchess, Orange, and Ulster County artists in their career growth and stability, and particularly to support underrepresented artists in our region, including Black, Latina, O or A, Indigenous, Asian, people of color, LGBTQ+, disabled, or low-income artists. But I want to, really strongly say we encourage all artists to apply to this program. So the key information with this is that this is an award that will provide unrestricted funding to 3 artists this year, 1 artist per county in Dutchess, Orange, and Ulster counties. So 3 artists, each getting $3,000. That's the award amount, and it is completely unrestricted, but for some of the things that artists might spend the funding on, expenses to create new work, purchase new equipment, access to educational opportunities, research or travel, bill studio fees, utilities, rent, or childcare expenses. And you are not expected on our application to tell us how you are going to spend the funds, but you might indicate some general directions that you might take, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. There is no budget required for this at all at any point in the application or in any kind of reporting. It is completely unrestricted funding. So the most important date right now is the deadline. Our deadline is May 24th, 2022, and that submission process closes at midnight. We're taking all submissions in on Submittable. I'll show you the application a little bit later on. If you have any trouble accessing Submittable or using a computer to complete this application, please contact us and we will do our best to assist you and find a way for you to apply. We are expecting to give out funding notification in June. I'm saying likely June because we just want to be careful and not say for sure, but I don't see any reason why at this point we would be doing it later than June. And there will be 3 artists who are likely going to be having a little award ceremony when they're selected. Okay, who's eligible for this award? So the artist must be at least 18 years of age or older at the time of submission, a resident of Dutchess, Orange, or Ulster counties in New York State, may not be enrolled in a full-time degree program at a university or college. And then as far as who is eligible, really artists working in all artistic disciplines are eligible, including not limited to visual, performing, written, digital, traditional, and experimental mediums. Multidisciplinary artists are eligible. We are not putting a definition on what we consider to be artistic work. We really just want to keep the definition very, very broad, even broader than some of our other grants programs, and just see what comes in. So if you have any concern that your work is not going to be viewed as artistic work or you're not going to be viewed as an artist, please reach out to me and we can discuss it. But I would think in most cases, we are going to view you as an artist. We're taking a very expansive view on what we see as artistic work, but you're always welcome to make an appointment with us to discuss it if you are concerned and want to make sure before you put the effort in to apply. Artists can be at any stage in their career. This is not something that's particularly for emerging artists or established artists or artists that are later in their career. It is for artists at any stage within their career. All artists that apply are going to be asked to provide proof of residency. So it should include your name and address, be dated no earlier than 2021, and be one of the following acceptable proofs of residency. If you have any problem where you're not going to be able to provide one of these documents and would need to provide an alternate, just reach out to us and we'll see if there's any other documents we can add to this list. But this should probably cover all of our bases. But if there's another document that would work, just feel free to let us know and we'll try to accept it. Okay, so that's really it. There's very little eligibility criteria. It's very broad in who is eligible. And now I want to talk about how these are going to be reviewed. And I want to preface this by starting off and reminding us that this is the very first year that we're doing this program, and it's a very formative year for us. So our review procedure is going to be based off all of our other grants programs with some minor adjustments to reflect what kind of funding this is. But it is not, I really think the way that this panel comes together this year to make the determination will really influence how the decisions are made in future years. This is something that we intend to be happening again in the future and are going to continue to fundraise for. We're really looking for this year to kind of indicate what are the values of the program moving forward. So all submissions are going to be reviewed using a peer panel evaluation process, which is the same process we use for our statewide community regrants and our Dutchess and Ulster County funds. A panel of artists will review all submissions and select one artist per county to award. Arts Mid-Hudson staff or board members will not have a vote in this process. Myself and other members of the grants team and our current executive director are likely to be there during the meeting, facilitating the meeting and participating in the discussion, but we will not be voting or making any determinations about who we think should be awarded. It is completely up to the review panel, which again is going to be made up entirely of artists and of course artists who did not apply to this program. The evaluation criteria. So there are two categories that we are going to give our panelists access to score and judge based on. And this is really going to guide them because at the end of the day, they are selecting one per county in what is likely to be quite a competitive program. So they are not held to this evaluation criteria, meaning like if this person scores the most, they will of course get the award. In most cases, I would imagine the top score, there's going to be a tie. I think there's going to be a lot of people who will score maybe a perfect score quite high on the scale. So it's not going to be an easy way just to say, okay, this is the person. It's really a way to narrow down their conversation, categorize, and think about all the applications that they saw, and then make a recommendation. So the two evaluative criteria are artistic merit, and this is based on samples of past work submitted and the artist statement provided. And the second evaluation criteria is impact. And this is taking into consideration the depth of the impact this award will have on the artist's career. I'm just going to pause here for everybody watching right now because I have a loud noise outside. Is that bothering anybody? Is it disrupting your ability to hear me? No? Okay, great. Then I will keep going. I don't want to hold us up. Thanks. If it gets loud, Moni, maybe just send me a chat and I'll pause for a second. It shouldn't take that long. Okay, so as far as the evaluative criteria, these are the two that they're going to be looking into, that they're going to be considering and scoring for. So it's important to think about these while you're writing your application and thinking about that the panel is going to score based on artistic merit and impact. These are the two areas that they're looking at when they're categorizing all the applications. However, again, this is going to guide them and provide some benchmarks. It is not the end all of their deliberation, how they're going to make their determination of who is awarded. Is the noise bad? No? Okay. Okay, great. It's really loud for me, but it'll be gone in a second. All right, so the way that the peer review process is going to work, so the panelists will review the application. That's great that you can't hear it. So the way that the review process is going to work, the panelists are going to review all of the applications on Submittable and input their initial scores for each of the criteria that I just mentioned, artistic merit and impact, and they'll award between 1 and 4 points for each. Panelists can also provide 1 bonus point if they believe the applicant is outstanding in any of the criteria or in meeting the overall program goals. So the lowest score an artist or application could receive is 2 points, and the highest it could receive is 9 points. And that's going to be the scale. And so the panel will meet to discuss all the applications and then may change their scores based on their discussion. So they're going to score everything ahead of time and then discuss together and then make a determination on their scores. All the conversations are timed to ensure fairness and efficiency during the meeting. After all applications have been discussed, we'll view all applications from highest average score to lowest average score, and then the panel will select 1 awardee per county. So I like to be very transparent about the process because sometimes knowing how the deliberations are going to occur might be helpful to you in the way you're thinking about how to present your application, and just so you understand how we're envisioning this process. Just some other considerations for the review process. As I said earlier, this is the first year. It's going to be a very formative year for the program. And so if you might, this is on my mind because I've already been having technical assistance calls with people who are interested in the program and asking me, what's going to be competitive here? It's really difficult for me to say just yet because we haven't done this yet. We haven't given out an unrestricted grant before with this panel process and seeing what the pool is like and what comes in. So I really recommend putting in application, and I'm going to give some other tips about how to maybe think about being well-rounded so that you can appeal to what could emerge as the primary goal of this panel. What's interesting about review panels is that it's just a group of people that comes together and they kind of form their own values and priorities together over the course of the day. And so that's really hard to ask what's going to come out of that. And so we think about that all panelists bring their own experiences, interests, and priorities to the meeting, and then interpret that through the guidelines and processes. And so panelists might favor particular areas like the quality of your work samples, the depth of the impact on the artist's career, the clarity of the potential for the direct impact, or, for example, the likelihood that the awardee will provide strong impact reports to Arts Mid-Hudson. So these are all the things that I could anticipate panelists might be thinking about. The last one particularly because this is the first year and we want to have a successful year and a successful group of awardees so that we can continue to fundraise and expand this program, hopefully in the future. So I say all of that to remind you that there's a variety of people reviewing these, and they might have different values and priorities and interests. And so to try to present as well-rounded an application as possible to improve your chances of success and maximize the potential that your application will resonate with different kinds of people. And as I've said many times, we anticipate a competitive applicant pool. And really all of these tips I've just given could apply to any grant program. It's a good way to think about how your work will be reviewed, trying to understand who the people will be on the other side. And something to remember is they will all be artists. That's who the panel will be comprised of. So now some tips about submitting an application. As I said before, the deadline is May 24th. All applications must be submitted online by midnight to our portal on submittable.com. And all materials are available on our website at artsmidhudson.org. And I'll go over there in a second to show you where to find some stuff. We'll do it now. Can you all see this, the application on Submittable? Great. I'm actually going to take one more step back first and just show you where to find it on our website. So artsmidhudson.org, that's our website. You can find it under Grants and Artist Opportunities, Grants and Funding. And then down here, you'll see the Empowered Artist Award, and you can click Learn More. And that's where you'll find all the information about this grant, a little blurb about it, link to download the guidelines, which are a PDF document, link to the applications, links to RSVP to the Q&A sessions, and a link to make an appointment with us. So I'm going to run through the guidelines, the application pretty quickly just to show you what's on here. And there's some links up here too, pretty much all the links that are on our page on our website. You'll give your contact information. If you have a website, you can link it here. If you have, if you don't have a website, but there's some kind of web presence or a good article about you or something like that, you can feel free to use that link here instead. You'll provide your address and that kind of basic information about who you are. There are 2 long form questions on the application. They are both have a limit of 400 words. The first is your artist statement. And so this is your artist statement for your artistic practice. It's not really project focused. It's not necessarily particular to one specific body of work. This is your artist statement for your artistic practice. And one thing I'm going to say often, and I've learned this from experience applying to other grants as well, since this is the first year of this program, I'm kind of learning things even from our applicants and answering questions and seeing what questions come up. And so you might see over the course, like none of the questions are going to change in this application, but if a question keeps coming up about a question on here, I might expand in the help text or add some additional hints. I really think even just myself, my knowledge base in terms of how to advise you is going to be much better in a couple of weeks after I talk to a lot of other people. So I'm not really recommending applicants rush to get an application in as soon as possible. I kind of recommend getting your draft ready, getting ready to go, making sure all of your components are in place, and maybe attending one of the future Q&A sessions, checking in, and then submitting your application, maybe a week or two before the deadline. Just so you really take full advantage of any assistance that is being offered by us. All that aside, again, 2 long form questions, your artist statement, and then the next is how will this award empower you and develop your career as an artist? And so this is where you'll explain any ways that you envision this funding directly impacting your artistic practice or you and your ability to create work. And we recommend being specific here about any specific ideas you have as far as how this funding might impact you. This is a place where you could broadly talk about what areas you might use the funding for. But again, you're not held to any of that, and it doesn't need to be overly specific or written like a budget at all. You could say something like, this is going to be used to support my living expenses while I create this body of work that I've been working on over the past, that I've been working on over the next year. That would be a sufficient way to describe how you're going to expend the funds. Again, the funding is completely unrestricted. This is not a project grant. So we don't recommend writing these responses like you're writing for a specific project. This is an award to an artist. So you're writing the application for your artistic career, for you as an artist. That is who the panel's looking to fund. They're not looking to fund a project. They're looking to fund a person. So that's something to keep in mind while you're writing these responses. Then you'll provide either a CV, a resume, or a bio, or any combination of those documents that you would like, but we do ask that you limit it to 2 pages. We don't want to provide very lengthy resumes or bios to the panelists because we anticipate that they're already going to be reading a lot. So please limit it to the most relevant or most recent stuff from your resume or CV, and you might include like a short bio within that document if you would like to. You'll upload your proof of residency and upload up to 10 work samples. We're allowing, these are the file types that are allowed. You can submit image files, videos, audio files, literary samples. There is no specific file limit on file sizes. My experience with submittable, it can vary on the file type. So I just recommend that you keep your file sizes as low as possible without harming the quality of the work. So typically, if you're able to keep the file size kind of lower and still open it on your, for example, if it's an image, if it's open full screen on your computer and it does not appear pixelated at all, that's typically a good enough size. If you have any concerns about resizing images, I'm not going to go too deep into it here, but there's a few people on our staff who are knowledgeable about that, and we can work with you one-on-one to make sure that your work samples are sufficient and acceptable for our submission form. So up to 10 files, and then 1 additional file here, you can upload a list of your work samples and giving, basically like the name, the file name, the title, medium, size, and year. You can do that as an additional attachment here, or you can just write that out down here under notes on work samples. It's your choice. Then there are some quick survey questions, really just asking how you heard about this, if you've applied to us before, just so we can keep track of the successes of this program and who we were able to reach. You'll sign down here, and that is it. If you want to work on this over time, the Save Draft button is down at the bottom. I encourage you to do that. And just as a note, if you're not logged into Submittable or you don't have an account with Submittable yet, when you come to this page, you'll scroll down, you'll see this description, then it will prompt you to log in here. So just know that you'll have to log in to even view the application, because if you start working, it will save that what you're working on. Okay. Can you all see that I'm back on my presentation? It's visible to you? Yes, thank you so much, Sabrina. Thank you. Okay, so just some tips about the long form questions. So we really recommend, as always, answering the questions as directly and succinctly as possible. We have set it at 400 words. We know that it sounds low, but I can tell you that, for a lot, it's a lot when you read it. And so our panelists are going to be reading a lot of writing. And when it gets too long, it's really easy to start glossing over it, whether they intend to or not. So we want to keep it succinct so that really for your benefit. So we strongly recommend, keeping it as direct, succinct, and to the point as possible. They are word limits. They are not suggested word amounts. We recommend, this is a common tip that I give, to keep the panel focused by providing complete information. So this can be, I'll be curious to see if anything comes of this for an unrestricted grant, but you just want to provide a complete picture of who you are and what your artistic practice is, because there's nothing worse than a panel getting distracted by a missing piece of information and wasting time trying to figure out some piece. So if you have any concerns about that, really to check for this, the best way is to have a trusted friend or colleague or someone at Arts Mid-Hudson read your draft so that we can make sure that we're getting a complete picture. It's really easy for ourselves when we're writing about ourselves and our work to make assumptions about what the readers on the other end know about us. So you don't want to make any assumptions about, and that's on to my next tip, write for someone who knows nothing about you. You want to assume the panelists don't know anything about you or your career, and provide as complete a picture within the word allotment and the attachments that we'll accept of who you are in your practice and what the potential for impact is on your career with this funding. Show evidence of the evaluative criteria, reference the goals of the funding program, or the priorities. This is something that can really go for any funding program that you might apply to. It's really good to align yourself with the goals of the program and show evidence that you understand and read the materials, because the panelists are going to read those materials to help prep them to review your proposals. So they're going to like to see that you're anyone who's speaking that language back to them. It will make them feel comfortable with your application. If you're stuck, I always recommend trying, and I do this myself when I'm writing grants, to try free writing or outlining. So meaning you're just going to set a timer and you're going to write all of the words and sentences and phrases that come to your mind and just dump it all on a page. And then that becomes really valuable raw information that you can move around and figure out the puzzle of putting together a really good response. I also recommend outlining, just kind of like listing off the key points that you want to hit. This is how I start any response to any grant application. And just a final tip is to demonstrate confidence, readiness, and to avoid the passive voice. So avoiding things like, I hope to do this, or I will try to do this. You want to be direct and say, I will be doing this, or I plan to do this. Because if wishy-washy language, we just had a panel earlier this week, and there were a couple applicants who had used that language, and the panel really picked up on it. It came up multiple times. So again, that's a great thing to ask others to look out for, or ask us to take a peek at when we do a draft review for you. Some tips for your work sample. So the first is that, of course, your work sample should support your words. You don't want, you want to create an accurate sense of what work samples they're about to look at from your written description. So this can be really difficult. This is something that I think a lot of artists struggle with. So again, a great thing to send us some of your work samples, send us your artist statement, or send us that other response and get some feedback from us. Provide work samples that are relevant to the intention of your application, your goals, and or your career trajectory. So I got a few questions about this last week about, what are the best types of work samples to submit to something like this. First, I would really recommend recent work and a work that is relevant to whatever intentions you're laying out in your proposal. I think it's a good idea to lay out some intentions or some goals in that, how will this impact your career question. And so then if you're talking really clearly that maybe you're a multidisciplinary artist, but for this next year, you're really going to focus on, your previous work has been in photography, and this year you're going to be focused more on painting. So you might then, if you're talking about that in your narrative, it would make sense to show more painting work samples, whatever you've set out as your goal for that year, showing work that reflects that goal or those intentions. use that descriptive list attachment or the note section. There's nothing worse than the panel saying they're being like, oh, that would be a good example of a distraction for a panel, actually, for them to sit there and say, oh, is this a watercolor or is this oil? Or I wonder how big this is. And it's just them, they're just guessing. They have no idea. And so it's great they have interest in the work, but they're wasting time guessing those things and not spending time talking about the great parts about you and your proposal and your application. Label the files very clearly, and there's some guidance on that on the application itself. And within the notes, it's a good idea to reference the file name when you're talking about a specific piece so that nobody gets confused about which one you're referring to. We don't recommend uploading any excessively large files. If it's particularly video, I recommend keeping video clips within no more than 5 minutes. Much longer, they're going to take a really long time to load, and I can't guarantee that the panel is going to wait for them to load, if it's taking a really long time. So try to get those a reasonable file size, and always check uploads for technical glitches. Don't just export something and upload it. People do it all the time. Just double check all your stuff before you upload it. All right, and then we're wrapping up here. I'm just going to give a couple notes about what are going to be the responsibilities of anyone who is awarded the Empowered Artist Award. So you'll be asked to do an interim and file report, but it is very, very short. We're really just asking for a short narrative from each awardee, meaning like about a paragraph or bulleted list, or just a little update about what impact the funding has had on your career so far. We'll have a phone conversation, or we'll meet for coffee or something and discuss what the impact has been on your career so far. And if you have any visual elements that would be helpful to us or that you want to provide to us, like videos or photos, we'll be happy to accept those at any time. So we'll do that at about an interim, halfway through, and then at the end. It is very minimal reporting. It's more about us trying to have a conversation with you and figure out what the impact was. And this is something that the panel is going to be aware of, that applicants will be asked, or awardees would be asked to do this, and that any resulting impact reports from awardees are going to be used to expand fundraising for this program in the future. So just keep that in mind, because that's not a review criteria, but that might be weighing on panelists' minds when they're making their determinations. So now my final tips. First, please review the online application form yourself, go through it, make sure everything looks clear to you, and send us an email if you have any questions, and the same for the guidelines. I like to recommend, and I do this myself, to read the guidelines before you start writing, check in on them when you're in the middle of writing, and then read it again when you're about to submit, just to make sure you didn't lose track of anything along the way. I find it to be very helpful to me before I submit a grant application, just to read the guidelines again and make sure I didn't go off track as I started writing. Organized digital copies. I recommend just getting all of those, any kind of attachments that you're going to need ready to go early on, so you don't have to worry about that at the last minute. And I also recommend, though, not rushing. As I said earlier, this is our first year doing this. I think a lot is going to come out of the assistance process for us and through the Q&A session. So I really recommend trying to, if you're here now and you're listening early on in the process, that is amazing. Start working on it now, get your materials together, and then join us for a future Q&A session. Get a little bit of insight there, and then go back and tweak and finalize your submission before submitting. And at any time, make an appointment with us. I say this all the time. I don't recommend working at the last minute, but I understand that many people might not have a choice but to work at the last minute. Maybe they didn't hear about it until a couple days before. It is never too late to reach out to us. Feel free to reach out. And if we can't accommodate you because we have too many people in line waiting for assistance, we will be very honest with you and say, go ahead and submit. Don't wait for us to get assistance, because we can't accommodate you anymore at this time. But it's never too late to reach out. It's never too late to just send your draft, throw it in our email, and if we can't read it, we will tell you. But it doesn't hurt anyone to ask. A reminder of our upcoming Q&A session. So we're going to have one on May 4th, May 13th, May 19th, and then I like to do like a last minute questions Q&A the day before the deadline. So we'll have one on May 23rd as well. This is not meant for like getting, what should I be submitting, or how should I be thinking about this? This is like last minute emergencies, because we know a lot of questions come up right before the deadline. We like to kind of accommodate those all at once. And that is all I have for the information session for the Empowered Artists Award. Again, I'm Lilia Perez. I'm the Grants and Programs Manager for Arts Mid-Hudson. I can be reached at grants@artsmidhudson.org or at this phone number, 845-454-3222, extension 11. And for anyone watching the video, please feel free to reach out to us or attend a Q&A session so that we can answer your questions.